Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. You are here for a special mid-afternoon sixth round with Kid Nate and Zane Simon at Bloody Elbow. UFC London, Anderson Silva, Michael Bisping, decision win, unanimous Michael Bisping in an incredible fight. The fight, I've never been a fan of Michael Bisping, but I almost had tears in my eyes at the end. Dude got the win. You can argue whether he did or not. I'd have to go back. I was not keeping notes round by round. It was a beautiful fight, an epic fight, but a bit of a clusterfuck. I've got to admit, the whole third round mouthpiece thing, I'm not sure. I think Bisping probably won the first two rounds pretty clearly. I had Silva winning the last three. Fourth round, arguable. I don't know. Fifth round, arguable. Very tough fight to score, but nonetheless, epic fight. Two legends talk, St. Simon.
I thought that they got the score exactly right, honestly. And I'll say this. It was a good fight. It was entertaining the whole way through, just totally crazy, back and forth, wild shit. It also depressed the hell out of me.
Anderson Silva doesn't have a chin, and he's a lot slower than he used to be.
Yes, and it was one of those fights where Anderson Silva was barely in that fight. Like, when he wasn't actively hurting Bisping, he was basically not fighting at all.
Yeah, he had a few lightning strikes. He had the Superman punch there towards the end of the fourth round, I think. The big flying knee that caught Bisping while he was looking for his mouthpiece. At the end of the third round, there was that move I really need to see again. There was some kind of inside kick from an odd angle. You saw it from behind Silva, so it's very hard to tell what he actually did. I look forward to seeing that in slow-mo.
Yeah, he had Bisping like up against the fence, and he was kind of like side onto him a little with Bisping off to the side, and then threw almost like a crescent kick with his front foot to the face. It was a really funky little kick. It was nice, but like I say, when Silva wasn't hurting Bisping, he was not in the fight at all. And then Bisping, he was winning to me round after round. I had him 1, 2, 4. I thought were pretty clear for him, and yet it was always just like on the brink of destruction,
Because Silva's much, much more dangerous than Bisping ever has been or ever will be.
Yeah. And then, of course, Bisping getting, I would say, basically TKO'd in the third round, or KO'd clean in the third round. And then them just being like, okay, well, let's keep going because it's the end of the round, was just like the weirdest thing. It added that much stranger dimension to the whole thing.
That whole sequence where Bisping loses his mouthpiece, points at the mouthpiece, Dean doesn't stop the action, Bisping points again, Dean doesn't stop the action, but Bisping's distracted. He catches a flying knee to the face that drops him. The bell rings. Silva thinks he won. Dean's insisting that the fight's not over, but they give Bisping minutes, like more than a minute, I think, before they get his stool out there and let the cornerman in there. There was a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll have to rewatch the fight and parse that, but I'm sure everybody in Brazil is swearing that Silva got the knockout right there.
Yeah, the hot takes coming in after that fight were amazing. As you can imagine, it's every third person being like, oh yeah, Bisping just got the hometown decision in a fight that he clearly lost. And then every other...
Because that's happened before. Ask Matt Hamill.
And then every other person being like, can you believe that fucking Anderson Silva guy? What a joke. You can see how bad he is without PEDs. As though he's not 40.
Yeah, as if that doesn't make a difference. And to me, I'm going to look at the bright side. This was a beautiful exhibition. I mean, Bisping's a guy who's wanted this fight forever. He always came up short. There was the fight where he probably beat Chael Sonnen but lost a decision, and Sonnen got his rematch with Anderson and then lost badly. That was Bisping's high watermark. That's as close as he ever got to the title shot. He might yet have a title shot in him because this guy, I got to credit him. I've never been a fan, but he has worked hard. He stayed healthy. Apparently, he's always been a clean athlete. He hasn't had any trouble, at least with the new PED regime. And he's consistently improved. I mean, this guy is just the little engine that could. He's constantly improving, constantly training. He came in looking great and took advantage. I mean, when you're seeing Michael Bisping dropping Anderson Silva, it is just so weird to see, especially in London. I rewatched the Lee Murray-Anderson Silva fight not that long ago, and if this Anderson Silva had fought that Lee Murray, it would have been over in the first round. I mean, Silva was being dropped by shots from Bisping, that Lee Murray was hitting him like 10 times as hard, and it didn't phase him.
Silva's at the stage now where he's at that Shogun, Bigfoot Silva,
Chuck Liddell.
Chuck Liddell, that stage where even no matter how good he looks, every hard shot that lands is going to hurt him badly.
Yep.
And that's just where it is. It's just like, and it's unfortunate. It's like the worst place to be for a lot of these guys, because they'll be out there and they'll be fighting good and they think that they're just, everything's going well. And then they get clipped and they go out, and then they're like, oh, well, I got, everybody gets hit hard. It happens to everyone. I mean, Dan Henderson has been running on this mantra for like 2 years straight now.
Yeah.
Every fight he goes out there, and any hard punch that lands, he's down. And it's just like, I mean, dude, keep saying, I know when to hang him up. I'll know when I can't do it.
Fighters never know when to hang him up. It's just, they just don't.
Especially hearing Brad Pickett today, too, after that terrible decision win he got, being like, if I had lost, I would have retired. And it's like, man, you won. Go retire.
Yeah, go out on a high note.
I want to go out on a high note, and then they never do.
Yeah, they never do. But let's stick to the main subject for a little bit longer. This, to me, I was worried about Anderson coming in like Fedor did in his last few after he lost to Verdum when he came back against Bigfoot and Dan Henderson, where he was trying to force the action. And he wasn't being the cool, calm, collected Fedor. Silva was kind of doing some of that too. He was resorting to his deep bag of tricks, like backing up against the cage and trying to go head movement only and doing things to try to force Bisping into counters. But then he didn't have the counter there. He would get Bisping coming forward and then had no counter. And
I think if you go back to that the fight he had against Stephan Bonner, which is very much kind of the tipping point for old Anderson Silva, for young Anderson Silva to old Anderson Silva, and it's like you can see more, like in retrospect, you can see more and more that Anderson Silva clowning that hard is Anderson Silva who understands that he can't just go out and dominate guys anymore, and he has to force them to make more mistakes.
Yeah, but he was always a counter fighter, even in his peak. I mean, he always
was, but there were, it used to be like, oh, I'll force you to make a little mistake and then I will wreck your world. And now it's, I'm going to try to force you to make the biggest, sloppiest, dumbest mistake you can, because without that, there's no opening.
Yeah, but the thing is, the thing I always expected Anderson Silva to lose would be his incredible quickness and dangerousness, not his chin. I never really realized how much he counted on his chin. But he still has those lightning strikes. I mean, they weren't quite as deadly, but that flying knee, the Superman punch, I mean, he landed 3 or 4 shots out of nowhere, lightning fast, very hard and effective. Maybe those shots would have knocked Bisping out a few years ago, but not today. Nevertheless, Silva was faster than I expected him to be. He just didn't have the chin, and I really don't want to see Anderson Silva fight again. I mean, to me, this fight, it was London. London was the site of some of Silva's biggest fights ever. Like I said, the Tony Fricklin fight with the famous reverse up elbow he got from Muay Thai movies, or Ambach. Well, I don't even know why I brought that up because I can't say it right. But then he had the classic against Lee Murray. And if you've never seen Anderson Silva versus Lee Murray, I highly recommend track that fight down, because Lee Murray was probably the best British mixed martial artist of his generation. He gave Anderson Silva everything he could handle, but Anderson Silva took it and beat him back. Lee Murray, of course, unfortunately decided to become the greatest bank robber in British history and is now rotting away in prison. But Bisping was never quite at that level, but this was the Lifetime Achievement Award for Bisping. And I got to, even though I've never liked the guy, I gotta take my hat off to him. I mean, Michael Bisping, you earned it. You worked hard. This is a great moment. It happened in London. I'm happy for him. I still think he's alive in the title hunt.
Yeah, I mean, he is, only because the title picture for middleweight just suddenly nosedived with Yoel Romero beating Jacare and testing positive.
Yes.
Those two things combined. And actually, I don't know what the deal is with Romero right now, because I'm hearing that may have been like a false positive and that he's contesting it, and the UFC may have jumped the gun. Through. Yeah, we don't know if his B sample may have tested clean or something. But but that event in and of itself just tanked the next 2 title challengers at the same time. And so they do have a division where it's just like, do you want to give Vitor Belfort another shot? Otherwise, we're replaying Silva Weidman right now, and that's what we got. And we're waiting for Jacare to get another big win so we can bump him back up the line.
Weidman.
Hmm?
You said Silva Weidman, but you mean Rockhold Weidman.
I mean Rockhold Weidman, yeah.
Yeah,
We're replaying Rockhold Weidman.
Yeah, and then, but that leaves Tim Kennedy out there, Michael Bisping out there.
Kennedy's basically kind of retired.
Yeah.
So it's just Bisping, like.
Yeah, and Gegard Mousasi, but nobody wants to see Gegard fight after,
No.
He's good, he's dangerous, he's just not making anybody tingle. I mean, the fight against Talis Lites, he busted the guy's face up, but he never went for the kill. He never put his foot on the pedal, and very frustrating to watch. That was the co-main event. Let's talk about that a little bit. Gegard Mousasi, Talis Lites, two guys, prodigal sons of this division. I mean, Lites had one of the worst title challenges ever against Anderson Silva back in the day, where he basically was completely impotent against Silva, and it went on because Silva needed somebody to attack him to get the finish. But then he left the UFC, but then he comes back, goes on a long winning streak, looks really good, loses a fight. Now he's lost another fight. Dude's lost battalion at this point.
Well, it just shows like how far he had to go, that he could improve immensely in his striking and then still get up to a top division striker and be totally impotent again. Like,
yeah, although he cracked him a couple times, but
a couple times when he finally realized that, like, it's like he finally fought like he was losing the fight badly and needed to win, and then he started just losing badly again. Like, that was the result. He cracked him a couple times, and then got hit hard enough to be disincentivized and tired out, and that was it.
Yeah, it was a sad night for Talis Lites, and really a frustrating night for Gegard Mousasi, who's had a frustrating run in the UFC, and to me still seems stuck in neutral. He's winning the fights he has to win. He's not winning the fights he needs to win, and when he does win, he's not winning pretty. He's not winning fans. It's very frustrating for somebody who has all the potential in the world. I mean, this is a really skilled mixed martial artist who could do better. I don't think he's necessarily has the talent to be a champion, but I do think he could do better than he's done.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know. Mousasi's been what he is for so long now. I can't even lament it anymore. Like he's fought for 12, 13 years. He's just this dude, and this dude is very skilled and effective everywhere, but is never. He's
got 4 gears, not 5. And when he needs to put it into the turbo, he doesn't even seem to know he needs to put it into turbo. I mean, he's the cool demeanor that's a big asset for him also holds him back in the end. So, but so this is a classic card from the modern UFC. You had a great title fight. I mean, the guys are a little old, so I'd give it 4 out of 5 stars. But if it had mattered, it would have been like a 5-star fight. Like if this was a title fight a few years ago, this would have, the fight itself delivered. It was just that neither guy's where they used to be, and it wasn't a title fight. But nonetheless, very entertaining fight for Fight Pass, a great deal. But the rest of the card pretty much blew chunks. You knew that kind of going in. There was some European talent that you had hopes for going in, but end result started off great with 2 quick finishes, but then decision, KO, decision. And it just.
I will make an argument here. And I know you're not going to be happy about it because you
make it.
I like all your entertainment in short, sharp chunks. But
I don't mind mixing in a full fight. Sometimes you want a fight to go the distance. It's just that.
I actually thought most of these fights, obviously excepting Omalanchuk Danho or perhaps Yatko Scott, I thought most of these fights were otherwise pretty entertaining. Maybe not Brees Nakamura. Like, there were a few spotty decisions that I didn't like, but I was entertained by Hobeloff versus Park and Allen versus Meza and Askham versus Dempsey was obviously pretty short, but Grant Vera and Amir Khani Wilkinson, I thought those were all solid. Like, there was
some skill on display, some heart on display. It's just the way it came together, particularly for me, the third fight, Daniel Omelianczuk versus Janis Taho, 2 heavyweights who looked like mirror images of each other, 2 chubby guys with beards and big tattoos, lumbering around, just sucking the life out of the fight card. And
That
so
was just a terrible booking by the UFC. Omalanchik's one of those dudes who's got an iron chin and is not otherwise a very good UFC caliber fighter. And then Danho's got like 2 years of experience in 6 fights, and you just threw him in against some guy that's tough and doesn't do much. And
yeah, and
you get an ugly fight out of it. That's all that's all there is to it.
Yeah, but heavyweight's so thin, I don't know what they could have done better. But let's run through in order. We'll run through the rest of the main card first. Before Gegard Mousasi and Talaslides, which was unanimous decision for Mousasi, we had Tom Brees versus Keitaro Nakamura. Nakamura was game and gritty and forced Brees to fight his fight. I was actually impressed. Brees was disappointed with his performance, but I was impressed that he was dragged into Keitaro's wheelhouse and still won.
And, I mean, I think it was the kind of, it's good to see Brees in a fight that makes him really uncomfortable and still win it pretty easily and clearly. I think that was good. And Brees has been a good grappler coming up. He was a good grappler. But Nakamura obviously had a lot of sweeps, a lot of answers, a lot of threats for him. And Brees
that omoplata was tight. I mean, and you don't see that very often where an omoplata looks like it might win the fight. So I can't help being a Japanese MMA diehard. For a second there, I was hoping that Keitaro would get that submission, but nonetheless, Brees' great performance is exactly what you want to see a young fighter. You want to see him get tested. You want to see him taken out of his comfort zone. You want to see him win, and that's what you got. So good booking. No knock on Keitaro. At this point, I mean, he's just a journeyman. Happy to be in the UFC. Winning, he got a win last time. Mostly he's lost in this UFC and his previous UFC run. So, I mean, that fight, obviously what you'd want would be a quick Brees knockout or some spectacular thing.
It won't build Brees any hype. I saw a lot of people being like, oh, this guy's a fucking prospect, lame. But, like people expect young prospects to look like Conor McGregor. That's the standard they always want. It's always John Jones, Chris Weidman, Conor McGregor. We want to see this guy blast everybody out there, and then
that's why you see somebody like Todd Duffy get huge hype, and then the bubble pops. But they don't necessarily.
Ben Rothwell is like on the cusp of a title shot right now, and it's like, has anybody ever been excited about Ben Rothwell?
Hey, I'm sure his family's very excited that he's doing so well, and he's had some exciting fights. But let's talk about Brad Pickett and Francisco Rivera. We talked about it a little bit. Good back and forth fight. Split decision win for Pickett, hometown crowd. I'd have to watch it again to know if I wanted to argue about that.
I thought it was a really clear, simple, straightforward Francisco Rivera win. I thought he took the first two rounds clean, got out wrestled in the third a bit, and that was it. Like, he landed all the big shots. He hurt Pickett, and he counter wrestled and did everything he needed to do to win 2 rounds of that fight. I don't see how they gave.
When you're in the dude's hometown, you need to do that little bit.
Yeah, but every other fight on this card got scored perfectly. I thought, like, every single other fight was well scored and well done. And
the entire nation of Brazil disagrees with you, but I'm probably not going to argue with that. It was a pretty good scorecard, but London judges have been notorious, and when you're in your opponent's hometown, you need the finish. And I think he took the pedal off the metal a little bit in the third round. Or maybe Pickett just dug deep and had the wrestling. Nevertheless, it was a fun fight. Both guys showed themselves pretty well. Although I agree with you, Brad Pickett's best days are behind him. The move down to flyweight didn't get him anywhere. Now he's back up at bantamweight. Not looking that great. I'm not really looking forward to seeing him. I'm really not. I've enjoyed his fights for a long time. He seems like a nice guy, but like you said, I don't see any need for Brad Pickett to continue.
This was pretty ugly. Every time Rivera hit him hard, Pickett just kind of froze up for a second and got hit with a couple more shots. And it's the kind of thing that, like, when dudes are getting on in their career like he is, like, I would say that's what you see with Anderson Silva too. He gets hit hard once and suddenly he's just kind of like freezing up. And
and we're learning more and more about head trauma, but we've known for a long time that head trauma after the age of 30, your mid 30s, is much more damaging than before. And so, please, guys, think about your future and your health. But let's run through the prelim card from bottom to top. So the first fight, you had David Tamor knock out Martin Svensson with the punch in the second round. I was pretty impressed with Tamor. Took him a little while to pull the trigger, but got some pop.
Yeah, he looks like he's right in the mold of, like, the modern hot striking prospect, which is a surprisingly good counter wrestler and then a fun action fun action brawler, the kind of dude that 10 years ago would have gotten put on his back every single time somebody touched one of his legs, but now has a serious brawl game.
Yeah, and can keep the fight on his feet. And his emotional reaction winning this fight was touching and yet amusing. I was
Yeah, it's Aoki-esque.
Yeah. I was laughing at him and crying with him at the same time.
Yeah.
So what more can you ask for an athletic performer? All right, then you had lightweight Timu Packlin submit Thibaut Goti in 24 seconds. Obviously the submission of the night. I mean, the guy should get Fight of the Night award for that work. Looked good. Didn't see enough of him to complain about anything.
I like Packlin. I think he's a good athlete, and I think he's got a really well-rounded game, and he looked sharp here. He grew he's improving fight to fight exactly the way I would want to see a young guy do.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see a European fighter that seems to have a really well-rounded game and is young and hungry and with a good camp and going places. So keep an eye out on that kid. We already talked about the shit show between heavyweights Daniel Milonzak and Jared Stanhope.
Yep.
Yeah, just skip that one. But then you had lightweight Rustam Kabalov, decision Norman Park. I thought Kabalov was going to just, tear Park apart like lions, but Park actually fought a really gritty fight, and I was nervous going to the decision because Park's judo and his grappling kind of stymied Rustam's game.
I mean, they listed off the stat before the fight started, but Park has like the second best takedown defense in lightweight history, and he's seriously underrated as a kind of a tree stump fighter. The problem's just been that, like, early in that fight especially, he doesn't offer any threat when he's striking. Like, he doesn't have the power, and in this fight he was just frozen up a lot. So even though he's great at stuffing takedowns, when you let a wrestler as good as Kabalov have no threat, he can just come in on you and try shots, he's gonna get you down. Like, Kabalov is just too good there.
Yeah, and he hits really hard too when he throws. Like, all the combat sambo guys just seem like they're always throwing to kill, and he's got that same habit. So Kabalov gets back in the win column. For Norman Park, I mean, it's a tough break. He did about as well as you could possibly expect, but this is just one of these guys that has a pretty low ceiling, and I expect him to keep him around as long as they're doing cards in England. But we'll see. But Kabalov,
Park's kind of a quadruple A fighter. I could easily, if he loses again, I think he'll probably get cut, but he's also the kind of fighter that I expect to do really well regionally and could easily get back to the UFC if he keeps slogging.
Yeah. Although once he does, then he's probably not going to go anywhere in the UFC. But Kabalov, I don't know what his ceiling is. I think he's a guy who's probably top 10 at best, never going to crack the top 5. But it's
I'd
possible.
be surprised if he got there.
Yeah.
I see him as like that T-Bow kind of, the fighter that's just outside the top 15, but is such a tough stylistic matchup that he doesn't, he beats a lot of guys, just not the right ones.
Yeah. Gleason T-Bow is a good comparison there. All right, and then you had middleweight Krzysztof Jotko defeat Brad Scott. I thought Jotko looked pretty good in that one, and I thought Scott looked pretty good too. But
I expected Scott to win just because I expected Jotko to kind of fade more as the fight went on, but Jotko did a good job keeping his output up, and Scott he's not bad. He's so plodding and so chasing that if he can't track you down, then he's kind of ineffective for long stretches.
Yeah, and then you had Arnold Allen defeat Yatsen Meza. Pretty dominant performance from Allen. Kids catching my attention.
Yeah, he looked good. I mean, I thought he was doing all the right things, fought a nice technical fight, and then when it got to the end, he just kind of went ape on Meza and almost knocked him out.
Yep.
He did for all, in all effect. I thought it should have been called a TKO. I didn't see any reason to call it to a decision, but it was a good performance. It's exactly what you want to see over somebody when you got a kid like that taking on somebody who's been through 30 fights and who's been, if not, Mesa's not a high level UFC guy, but he's a tough dude. He's been in there and he's a good for a scrap.
It was a tough test for Allen, and he passed it with flair. And so then you had middleweight Scott Askren knock out Chris Dempsey with a pretty vicious combination late in the first round, 4 minutes, 45 seconds. Kind of an ugly fight. Dempsey forced it into his wheelhouse out of Askren's comfort zone, but it didn't help him in the end.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised Dempsey got the early takedowns, but this is one of the, Dempsey's not UFC level. These days, I would say, almost worse than being only a grappler anymore is being only a wrestler. Like, if all you do is get takedowns and you can't control the ground game and you can't control the stand-up, then everybody can hurt you. It just feels like those are the dudes that are getting absolutely blasted out of the UFC, and Dempsey's one of those guys.
Yeah, and he got blasted tonight. And then you had bantamweight Davey Grant defeat Marlon Vera, unanimous decision, 30-26 on all three cards because of a point deduction for glove grabbing. Kind of a clusterfuck with that because Vera didn't understand. Clearly, I don't think he understood what the ref was saying. His corner should have clarified why he was being warned in between rounds because he went right back and grabbed the gloves again and got a point deduction. And the refs, to their credit, have been more aggressive with the point deductions lately. I don't know if there's been some kind of meeting or the Borg hive mind of MMA referees has had enough. But, the referee wasn't taking any guff and called him out. But it didn't matter because Davey Grant totally dominated the fight.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a nice microcosm of British imperialism from Mark Goddard there. It's just sort of, the foreigner doesn't understand, I'll just shout louder and slower at him.
It really was like an old John Cleese sketch, screaming at him. So anyway.
Grant just clearly outclassed him.
Yeah, every time Grant touched him with leather, he wobbled, it seemed like, and dominated every aspect of the fight. So good performance from Davey Grant. And then featherweight Makwan Amirkhani defeated Mike Wilkinson, unanimous decision. This, though, was a fun fight with some neat grappling exchanges. I mean, Wilkinson at one point was threatening the old Frank Mir, Pete Williams shoulder lock. It's basically a key lock, but you're doing it with this elbow. Pretty neat stuff. Dude. Yeah. But it wasn't enough. I mean, Amirkhani dominated other than just for a few moments.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I think this is a really good win. In a sense, it's a good win to see from Amirkhani because he showed that for round after round, he can just be controlling and really dominate with his wrestling rather than having to be like, I got a flying KO or a guillotine in 5 seconds, so I won.
Yep.
But at the same time, he did kind of seem like he totally gassed by the third round. Even though he was fighting exactly the fight he wanted, he had nothing left late, and he scraped out a win. It was a good win. It was, he has such a weird, like, technical, athletic combination of a game that he'll be a fun fighter to watch down the line. But this was, I don't know, it was a good fight. It was a fun back and forth fight.
Yeah, it was. And Amirkhani's only had, a minute and a half total UFC experience in his previous 2 fights, won his first fight in 8 seconds. And if you look at his record, when fights go into the third round, they go to decision with him. Like his finishes are in the first and the second round. Pretty much first round is when all his finishes are. He had one fight go to second round decision. I don't know what the deal was with that. But so, good experience for him to get dragged out a little deeper than he wanted to go and have a little bit of a tougher fight. I guarantee you he hadn't trained against that Frank Mir arm lock thing. And so
I'm sure he hadn't.
And so, good experience to see some stuff you're not expecting, to see a guy that I think you pretty clearly thought he would walk through Wilkinson just like he'd walk through everybody else. And so, but he wrote it out. The guy Wilkinson gave him everything he had, and Amirkhani took it and kept going and won. So that's your card. And then back to the Silva Bisping fight. I mean, to me, this reminds me very much of the Sugar Ray Leonard Marvin Hagler fight that happened back in the 80s after both guys had passed the absolute peak of their careers. It was still a great fight. Nowadays, people talk about that as a legendary fight. And back in the day, boxing gave us the fights fans wanted to see. No, boxing never did that. They made us wait until both Hagler and Leonard were a little bit past their primes. And I think fans looking back on history will say, Anderson Silva, Michael Bisping, 2 legends in the cage, great fight, and they won't quite get how past their peak they were when this fight happened. So
yeah, it was such a weird fight. I was watching it and being like, this fight is really cool, and I'm so fucking depressed by this because, like, watching Anderson Silva just, like, barely, like, it was like a finger hold on that fight the whole way, just like one finger in it, and yet still almost beating Michael Bisping was just such a weird thing.
It was very frustrating. There were definitely moments where I was screaming, kill him, Anderson, and he almost did it, and but to Bisping's credit, he survived all of those close shaves and kept coming, never gave up, never lost his head, always kept coming back, and I can't believe he was hurting Anderson Silva. I mean, this is old pillow hands Michael Bisping, but I think that says more about Silva's chin, although Bisping's been training, applying himself, but power is not really something you can improve in the gym.
Yeah, I think it says. I mean, we've seen other guys who have power fire away on Anderson Silva and not hurt him a little. Even a little. And
Yeah.
so I can't take that and be like, Michael Bisping suddenly found secret power. It's got to be more like Anderson Silva's now getting hurt by everybody.
Yeah, if they have Fight Pass streaming into whatever Moroccan prison Lee Murray's currently in, I'm sure he was furious and screaming at the computer screen because, if he fought this Anderson Silva, he would have beat him back in the day because he hit Anderson Silva with some amazing shots, and Silva didn't even. It's like he wasn't even touched. Like even Chris Lieben back in the day was cracking Silva with some big stuff. Didn't even make an impression on Silva, and
well, there was like that Chael Sonnen fight where he just got ground and pound for like 5 rounds straight, and there were times when Sonnen was just landing shots that were cracking Silva's head right against the mat over and over, and he was just like, that's fine, I'll just wait and wait and wait and slap on a triangle and win.
I don't think that was a plan, but nonetheless, you're right. He was never really hurt or stunned by some unceasing 4-round barrage of ground and pound from Sonnen, and Sonnen was winning on the feet too. Yep. And but that's what happens. That's the nature of existence. Human life is brief, and we are frail creatures who have brief athletic peaks in our late 20s and early 30s, and then from there it's a long slide down. And I think Silva's hit it. Hats off to Anderson Silva. It's been such an honor to watch him, just to exist on the same planet with a martial artist that creative, that skilled, the things he's done in MMA. Despite the PED scandal in his last fight and all the nonsense and bullshit that's come with it, I still think he's one of the all-time greats of the sport. I always love the guy. I really don't want to see him fight again because who's he fight from here? I mean, this one in London where he had a historical connection, Bisping always wanted the fight. It made sense, but there's not going to be any more Nick Diaz's or Michael Bisping's. I mean, what do you do with Anderson Silva?
Yeah, I mean, only like they could do another Vitor Belfort shot if Belfort really starts to slide, or they'll find they could find a few guys out there here and there, maybe another welterweight that feels like he wants to make a late career jump up to middleweight. I don't know who, maybe like, if Matt Brown decided he really wanted to come up to middleweight.
If GSP wanted to come back, they could do that.
There are ways that they could get more money out of Anderson Silva, and if he wants to keep fighting, that's fine. I'm not going to tell him to quit, but yeah, I kind of. Yeah, it's one of those things like I'm never gonna be hyped for it. Like I might be jittery because I don't want to see him get KO'd and I really like him, but it's not gonna be the kind of thing where I'm like, oh man, Anderson Silva, I can't wait till he steps in the cage and puts on another weird 5-round barely fights performance.
And gets hurt a lot by a guy who's not really fit to hurt him. But the thing is, if the UFC doesn't book those fights, there's Bellator. They'd put him in there with Royce Gracie. I don't think Dada 5000 will be fighting again, but I wouldn't put anything past Viacom and Scott Coker at this point. So that's our show.
Anderson Silva, you heard it here. Book it.
Oh Lord, let us hope we never see that day. But not that I want to die young and miss it if it happens.
Oh God, if it does happen, I'll be there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Subscribe to MMA Nation on iTunes or MMA Nation on SoundCloud. And that way you can get the audio without the ugly. Read us on BloodyElbow.com. Follow us on Twitter at KidNate, at TheZaneSimon. Any plugs I'm missing?
We got everything coming for next week because it's going to be McGregor versus Diaz. So we'll have Knuckle Up, Care Don't Care, If I Did It, 5th or 6th round for that fight, Perspective,
and the
fifth section, everything.
Yeah, so don't miss it. Subscribe now. Hit that button in the top right corner. Subscribe to MMA Nation, and you'll get all those shows. So thanks very much. Adios, MMA aficionados. We'll see you next time, Zane.